Those of you that don't know me, my name is Lori Lalonde, and I run this user group. I have for the last 4 or 5 years. If this is your first time attending in my tenure, welcome. I hope you have a good time. Tonight's speaker is Jeff Dutra. He's awesome. The last time he gave a talk here was wildly popular. Everyone loved it. All right, so special thanks to our sponsors, Code Connect. Josh Vardy's in the house. He's the CEO of Code Connect. His company sponsored our first 3 .NET sessions, and they're providing a free license every month for their VS plugin called Alive, which they just released another version. Yeah, yesterday. I saw that announcement. So thank you, Josh, for supporting our group. Also, Microsoft supports us, and we have a bunch of other vendors that are providing us some free licenses to give away. So JetBrains, Ozcode, Reflect Software, Telerik, Infragistics, Pluralsight, DevExpress, Code, and we have Code Magazine and MSDN Magazine. And O'Reilly gives us free discounts on books and stuff. Okay. If you love to tweet, use the hashtag CTTDNAB, please, and let us know how we did. That seems blurry. That seems blurry. There we go. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes. I thought it was my eyes for a while because, I am old, but I felt like it was not that. Okay, after tonight's session, please go and rate the meetup. We really love to hear back from you on what you guys thought of the session. Honest feedback, please. Because whatever you say that we need to improve, we will work on it for the next session and for future sessions. And if you really loved our speaker, please say that so that we can bring him back for more stuff in the future. There's some new job postings on our job board on our meetup page, so definitely check that out. If you know anyone that's looking, forward them the link to that page. If you know of job postings that are available at a company you're working at, feel free to post it. Anybody can post on there. And we're always looking for sponsors, so I think for the more in the new year, in 2016, there's some months that are still open. And upcoming events. This is the big one. So we have a Windows 10 Dev Camp coming up on Saturday, November 14th. That's a full day. It's going to be the usual suspects talking. Me, Atlee Hunter, Andre Murkovic. If you guys haven't seen or heard them talking, you've never been to any of our sessions here before, they're awesome. So we're going to have a full day camp. It's going to be at the Central Library downtown. Their facilities are newer. The meeting rooms are really nice. So we have a combined meeting room, which is phenomenal. I saw it. They have the built-in projectors, and there's going to be one projecting on each side of the wall. So no matter where you're sitting in the room, you'll be able to see what's going on. We'll have food. We'll have Tim Hortons coffee, I promise. And we'll also have prize giveaways, most notably this Raspberry Pi. I don't know if you can tell in the picture, but it's a Raspberry Pi 2 starter kit, and it comes with a lot of things that I don't know what to do with, but I'm sure you will if you're a maker and you really like that kind of thing. And we also have a loot crate to give away, and we will have licenses to give away for Infragistics and Telerik and stuff. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We have about 17 people registered already, and we're hoping to get at least up to 30. That would be awesome to make it a really full day. But if not, then the 17 of us are going to have a party at the library, and it's going to be awesome. And the London.NET developers, they're always running their group. Next one is developing Windows 10 apps. So if you miss our Windows 10 Dev Camp, you can go out to London in December and see Tom's session on developing Windows 10 apps. HackerNest runs a social every month, so there's the information for that. They're also on Meetup, so they're pretty easy to find. They're going to be at the Distillery Labs in November. Last month they were at Canadian Tire. It was really cool. And there's a couple of our sessions coming up. So our Xamarin session is building iOS applications. Tom Walker will be doing that talk. And then at the end of November here, we're doing the lightning rounds. And so we have 4 people slated to talk. So we have Arlen, we have Andy, we have Keith Maw, and then we have the VP from Sodi, who's also going to be talking. So it's going to be really, really fun. Good mix of talks. VS Orlando's coming up. There's some some groups for the ladies to join in the area. Girl Geeks Dinner, they just started back up again. Sam's redoing their website for them. Ladies Learning Code, they're always running stuff. And Lean In KW, and there's Women Powering Technology. There's some kids groups as well. And so without further ado, I will turn it over to Jeff so that he can get started on his awesome talk.
So, intro to TypeScript. Anyone here use TypeScript before? Okay. Anyone use it for like a significant amount of work? One person. So, a few months ago, Lori asked me to do a web talk, and she gave me a choice. And she goes, "You know, I do Angular or TypeScript?" And I go, "I haven't used either one of them like a lot. I use them both a little bit, but I hate Angular, so I think my choice is TypeScript." So I went in and I'm like, I always want to do it. So this is like my talk is not of a TypeScript expert. My talk is someone who tried to get into it and learn the best practices, how to use it, and whether it's an effective way to develop large-scale front-end JavaScript applications. So again, not an expert. And if you believe this, I'm not an expert at anything, which is all right. Anyone here a JavaScript expert? One person? And who's been writing JavaScript for more than 5 years? 10 years? It's painful. It was painful a long time ago, right? And 10 years, and I still would not even consider myself an expert. It wasn't that JavaScript was so terrible. It was that browsers were terrible, right? So you had to like all these hacks to make things work. And so I struggled through that. Many that struggle, well, I usually do this when I do my talks now, I try to talk about where I am in this kind of level, and depending what technology, like right now I would say this is where I am at TypeScript, almost advanced beginner, just because I know JavaScript well and those kind of things. So I'm trying to get an expert, and that's why part of the thing is I do these talks and all that kind of good stuff. But that's basically it. So anyone can tell what TypeScript is that doesn't really have one of those, you're the TypeScript expert, so you just cheat if you say. Anyone know what it is? What's the point of it? Can you tell me the point?
Hopefully it's to make coding simpler and robust.
More robust. Okay. Anything else? Yes.
Is it supposed to take the better parts of JavaScript and bring them together?
You're right. It's supposed to take the better parts of JavaScript. That was nice, right? So what it is so everyone who's been writing C#, I'm sure a lot of people have written C# in this room, right? They love the static typing, and it's like, but JavaScript doesn't have it. So it's like, it's broken, right? Like it doesn't work. Because where is that? How do I know this is an int? How do I know it's a string, right? So no interfaces, no abstract classes, all these things. So TypeScript is that attempt to kind of bridge the gap. So that's the way I look at it. So it's a superset of JavaScript, unlike some of the competition. So if anyone's used Dart or CoffeeScript, what those things are basically saying is JavaScript sucks, we're doing it better, and we're going to compile to JavaScript. What TypeScript says, we're going to take most of what you know and put some typing around it to make it, to encourage you to write better, more modular code. Compile to JavaScript, open source, developed by Microsoft. I think everyone kind of probably knows that, right? So some of the same people were involved in creating C# were involved in creating TypeScript. So you see similarities there. So these are the benefits, and this is why people have moved to it a little bit. Like that's why, if you'll probably see the next slide, like Google and Microsoft are backing it. Angular 2.0 is going to be really supporting TypeScript. So you have a couple really big companies, can't get much bigger, right? Like just need Samsung and Apple to join, it'll be a nice party. And so optional static checking, kind of options you can do any's or whatever, but symbol-based navigation can be incrementally added to your code base in IntelliSense, right? So when you write JavaScript, you hit thing dot, nothing shows up, right? Or just some random thing show up. That's what they're trying to help you with. So if you know the definition of an object, it kind of helps IntelliSense that way. But this, I think, is the big one. I think this would kind of drove a lot at the beginning. So your C# Java devs, right? So it looks there's classes, you can inherit things, right? There's an interface thing. Like this feels like what I do, right? So it offers classes, modules, and interfaces. So I've said before. So if you see this little note, I don't know if you can see at the back. So we get into why classes are usually, maybe always, not a useful pattern in Java. Yes.
So we were talking, so are you actually writing in JavaScript? Or Right, is this skill transferable? Like, so if you didn't know JavaScript at all, and you started with TypeScript, then you had to go to JavaScript, you can actually take the skills you learned and.
Yeah, so I have some slides show like before and after. And what you can just copy over your existing JavaScript and throw it right in a TypeScript file, and it works fine. It is just JavaScript in the end, and just you can opt in by putting annotations and stuff like that. But then it compiles, so it creates a matching file, like the JavaScript version of your code. Gets rid of all the sugar and makes it regular JavaScript. Okay, static versus dynamic. Who knows the difference between static and dynamic languages? Easy ones, right? Like, anyone have some easy, like, no-brainers? Anyone? How about some brainers? Does anyone have brainers? Right? Like, obviously, the big ones, right? Your types, right? You know it at compile time what your types are, not runtime. When you're dynamic, it's more inferring. It's inferring what the type is, right? That's the big difference. So it's trying to bring static principles to JavaScript. So you know when you're building it that this thing accepts an integer, a string, whatever you want it to be, a function. So yeah, do type checking, the process of verifying and enforcing constraints of types. At compile time as opposed to runtime. So you write your JavaScript, it's constantly by default in Visual Studio now. You open a TypeScript file, you save it, it creates a JavaScript file, the same name right beside it. So I do at runtime, so basically what I said. Not bad. I just copied from Stack Overflow, so I'm not a genius. I just know what Google. It's very important in our field, right? So there's things that seem dynamic, right? Like in CSharp, I know people all the time who make the mistake that thinking var is what is JavaScript doing in my CSharp, right? And everyone use var here in CSharp? Anyone not use var? So some people don't do either. That's awesome. Cool. So with var it's simplicity type, right? So it's still static type. It runs. It's still, if it's a string on the left, it's still a string on the right. It just helps you so you don't couple yourself to the type that's coming in. So like if you have a resharper, everyone who has a resharper definitely uses var. It just like hammers into you, right? It's like, you could use var here, right? So, anyone have a good reason why, when not to use var, why you shouldn't use var? I know it's about JavaScript, but we can always talk about C# sometimes, right? Yes?
You need to ensure that your variable is of a certain type, or is a certain
Yeah, so you want like a certain type of like list type or something like that?
If there's two that implement the same.
Yeah. Or so if you, yeah, that makes it a little simpler.
You have to pre-declare your value up front.
Yeah.
Initialize it before
And
you're
some-
going to use it.
And sometimes you're using primitive, you want to easily see the code sometimes which primitive you're using or something like that.
There's also some types that don't cast properly, data
Yeah.
tables or data rows and whatnot. Use var to cast it, it's going to fail.
Yeah. So it's good a lot of time, like if you're calling a class method, it returns or something, like, that's great because you can always change, oh, this used to be a list, but I want to be higher numeral now. You don't have to go everywhere in your code to switch it all to that. But that's enough C# for one day, right? This is not what we're here for. You guys know what you're doing. So advantages. So errors that compile team. I don't think that's right. Suppose this still save time. But I'm sure there could be a compile team that's probably outdated. I don't think we have a compile team anymore. You definitely don't need one for TypeScript. That would really suck. So you don't need to write unit tests to verify type errors. So some people have gone on the path of, you have dynamic languages, you write a unit test to show that that's a string. It's kind of annoying. It kind of wastes the time. You don't need to do it if it's static type language. IDE support is far superior because you can do things like IntelliSense and know the definition of a method, all those kind of interesting things. Extra documentation, you can get it just by knowing the type, so you can generate docs based on the signature. And it can help large teams understand code base better. Again, that's a debatable thing. Like real, like dynamic language guys who love it can tell you the opposite of that, right? So use your basic types. They're probably like very similar, right? Because you have your booleans. Of course, you have to have a boolean. Right, that's awesome. And then number, because I don't know if everyone knows, but JavaScript only has one number type. So I don't know if you listen to Douglas Crockford, he's like the high priest of JavaScript. So he said it's great they have one number. They just happen to choose the wrong one. But it's great because sometimes, like, why do we need 6 different types of numbers? Some people like that, but in the end, it's interesting. But so you have your strings, and you have lists, and then generics, right? So you have an array of whatever types you want. Seems kind of comfortable if you're a C# guy, like to make that move. You have any's, which is just var, right? What's the point? Like, it's like doesn't really help. It's the same thing. And then functions. So you define functions and the return types. So if it's a void, you say it's a void, and then it's so you get it, right? So you know there's no return. All that stuff. So interfaces is one of the main pieces of TypeScript. And what they really are, it's not how you would think of as an interface. Like, it's not like a signature of some class or something like that necessarily. It's really just defining the contract. That's all it's kind of doing, but still interesting and good. So one of the most beneficial, I think, of TypeScript. It's good to know when you're writing to a method what the signature is expecting. It helps with interfaces. You use it for classes, but you'll start seeing this hammered in a bit. Classes are annoying in JavaScript because they're not what you think they are, and so they cause people who think it's C# or Java to think, oh look, I create a new class and it's an instance of it. Everything works as expected, but it doesn't. So it's kind of we'll get into that. So that's what an interface looks like, right? So you define it and you say it's got 2 properties, and then so if you try to call that function, another TypeScript file, it's going to yell at you saying that's not the signature. But helpful so far, right? Like this seems like it would help a lot of the JavaScript problems. It's kind of leading. Again, I like spelling mistakes. I just want to show that I am immortal. I don't know what a thimph is, but I'm sure it's interesting. And so this is what it looked like. That's your code. That's your TypeScript code. And it turns into this, right? That's just JavaScript. You don't see the interface stuff because it doesn't matter. JavaScript doesn't know what you're talking about. So it just does that. So regular JavaScript, you can copy and paste whatever you want. It's the same thing. So function types. So see it's a void here now. So you can say that is of that type. So that function takes those parameters. If you see the interface showed out, it sounds silly saying that out loud, but and so you define that shoutout maker has that signature. Make sense? It's good. And then, so before, all that turns into that. That's all you're doing. Just simple. Do a shoutout if it's awesome, you know? Those kind of cool things. So function parameter and types. So function, you say, again, it's a signature, and you say it returns a number, right? And so, again, this helps with IDE and IntelliSense and all. You know what to expect. You're not going to make mistakes. You're not going to treat a string like it's an integer. When you say string 1, like in quotes, plus 1, it's not going to be 11. It's going to let you know that you made a mistake. And then, so you do optional parameters. Everyone use optional parameters have been around since C# like 3 or something. So same idea, same with defaults. So REST parameters. Anyone here heard of REST parameters before? Anyone? I have. It's obvious, yes. But so with REST parameters, yes, of course, the React guy knows what REST parameters are. Okay. So basically, it's like just pass this whole thing in. That's the rest of the arguments. So it'd be interesting to see how Lori builds her cred. See like that? Look at that. I even I tailored it for this talk. Isn't that amazing? So I ran out of space. I know you do more than this, Lori, but I ran out of space on my screen, okay? So I couldn't get more in there. So can anyone tell me what this is going to turn into in JavaScript? Can anyone have any guess what this is going to look like? It's kind of weird, right? Like, what can that... Is it an array? Any guesses?
It's just going to be a single variable because it's passed as whatever.
Okay. Think more JavaScripty.
Nothing.
Arguments.length, right? So it does that, and then it starts at the second one. So it's like, obviously you wouldn't write something like that, but who cares, right? Like, so that just turns into regular JavaScript. Again, you just paste that, it works. If you just paste that in any JavaScript engine, it's going to work perfectly fine. But it's not it's not even close to what you expected, right? Like using just the arguments, but of course, that's what you would use. So you know you can always access that. Because it's basically an array. Like, I don't know if anyone knows the arguments object. It's array-like. So you can kind of iterate over it, but it's a little bit different. So that's all it's going to do. So it's do a join, it's going to build a string, and it's going to write out Lori builds cred by doing those things. So anyone have had a really fun time with this word in JavaScript? Anyone? It's fun, right? Like, how many times? I think that's where I lost most of my hair. That's going away from my head right now. So this is like, if you come, especially coming from a C# or a Java language, you expect this to work like this does over there, but it doesn't work like this at all. It's not what you think. And so, if you try to do this, or you try to do this.libraries.link, if that was a real true, like Java or C#, then that would work, right? Because it's just a property of the class. But of course, that will not work. So TypeScript says, hey, we got a solution. Just do that and we'll take care of you. Right? Oh my God, it solves all those problems. It doesn't. It solves this problem. This is still a mess. So you see that kind of notation, right? Like the arrow function there. So that is like its thing to preserve this state, this context in the object. And it turns into this. Oh, I didn't mean to say that. So it just declares that, like you probably have seen that a lot in JavaScript files where you say var that equals this, or var whatever paradigm you use in your organization. Anyone tell me what this is going to output every time? Yes? It's going to output the same thing. First element of that. What's that? Where? What's the best library? That's all right. That's a tie back to my last talk I did. So it's always going to show the first thing, and it's always going to be index minus index, which is always going to be 0, which is always going to react. See how that works? So you can use that if you want to decide which library you want to use. You can use that function; it'll tell you. It's very helpful. So we keep going through this, right? Like, but again, you can look this up in the TypeScript website and do this kind of information. And I was going to go right into it. I'm like, okay, let's just start going crazy with this stuff and so really see what we can do with it. So you have function overloads, right? So you can create, this thing has 3 parameters, this one has 4, you know to use that one when there's 4, all those kind of. Then you have generics, you have mixins. But, look, I skipped ahead too far. So I got into it, I spent like tons of hours, and I'm like, there's a lot of things I don't like about this, and that's where we're kind of going to go. So here, if you wanted me to tell you today all the cool things about TypeScript and you have to use it, you're going to be a little disappointed the next little bit. So it can be very useful in good situations. I think that's up to you to decide. When you're making decisions, you decide when it's a good time to use it. Lots of great apps are being written with it. So again, not a TypeScript expert. So grain of salt, right? So generating docs, like if you want to use JS docs, actually document your APIs, all this stuff like that, it's very difficult. New version of TypeScript, I think they're making that better. Again, not sure, but you can't use other transpilers. So if you want to write ES6 or ES Next or ES 2015, we're going to call it, the new stuff that's coming in the JavaScript language, you have to rely on the TypeScript transpiler to get it for you. So there's other great transpilers, and we'll look at Babel a little bit in a little bit. Some people have seen Babel, you saw it in London, right? We've talked about that. But so that gives you that ES, so you can't use it. So you have to, like, if you want to do different things, you can't use that in TypeScript, you can use it in the rest of your app. It's kind of weird. And it's a non-JS native solution, so it's not running the JS environment, it's another thing to run that turns things into these JavaScript files. That's not really within your app. And you can't turn it off and on. So sometimes JavaScript being dynamic is great, and you want to say, you know what, I know you won't usually want a string here, you only want this, but in this situation, I'm okay passing this other function in. You can't just disable that temporarily at runtime. It's kind of difficult because you're trying to build it, it won't let you build it, so it'll yell and give you errors. And the type definition files. So if you haven't worked with TypeScript, if you want to use like other libraries, if you want to use Angular, or you want to use all these things, and you want to use those things as statically typed, there's this thing called definitely typed. It's like a GitHub repo. And what they do is they create these DT files.
TDS.
TDS file. TDS? Okay. And all they are is they give you the kind of annotations for that library. The problem is that they're not always up to date, or if they're not a big library, they may not be there. So you could, it's GitHub, you could make the changes if you want and submit a pull request and all this thing like that, but it's kind of annoying, especially the JavaScript world, right? Like a new library pops up like probably 30 as I started talking. But, so that's kind of a limitation that I didn't really like. And again, we're almost done with this top point. Encourage developer to use classes. So anyone who thinks JavaScript is not a classical inherent language is correct. They try to make it so it is, but it's not. And so it makes it feel like, so things that it doesn't fix, like it doesn't fix, we talk about this, right? So it doesn't necessarily fix this problem. So if you're not using the arrow function properly, that's still going to be hello undefined. But you would think that would mean hello, whatever you pass in, but it doesn't.
Does that preclude you from doing your own closure and embedding your own closure there?
No, you can do it.
So it doesn't preclude you, it just doesn't
But you can do that
generate it for you in the first place.
You can do that without TypeScript, right? So it's like TypeScript, you may seem like, so it's telling you it's got a class for you, right? And you think
Sure.
that, you know. So the more research has started coming across things like Crockford, they've said, like, these people who write great apps love the fact that it's not type checking. Right? So you get sweetness from it, as he says, but sometimes the trade-off doesn't always, it's not an easy trade-off. It's not like it's all free having typing. So JavaScript has problems, really. Anyone who's written a lot of JavaScript, large-scale JavaScript apps, dealt with problems that it's like, what is happening here? Like you spend hours trying to figure things out. So what this guy, Jeff Walker's saying, is that the problem isn't that it's an dynamically prototype-based object-oriented the classes. That's a strength. A lot of these guys who write great apps love that part of it. The problem is that it was wrote in, 2 weeks? I think the language was created in 2 weeks. So obviously it wasn't perfect. They tried to make it easy where you didn't have to put semicolons in, right? But sometimes it's going to ruin your whole day or whole month not having semicolons. So stuff like that, they make it easy for people to start writing code. But tons of landmines there that just destroy people's self-esteem, their will to survive. And the point is, what is type correctness giving you? Right? Like, if you have type correctness, is your app a good app? Like, as everyone wrote great, every C# app you write is fantastic? No, it's only a part of the whole thing. Right? Of course, it's awesome. I never make mistakes. You don't even need tests. Like, static typing gives you everything. As long as it's a string, who cares what it does? But that's what we should rely on for program correctness. Automated testing, whether it's unit testing or if you want to use Selenium. I know some people like it. I hate it because I think it's too brittle. You have to have like a special guy. I'm the Selenium guy. Oh, you need something? Give me 4 weeks and I'll be done this project. I'll come do the Selenium stuff for you. Oh, it's totally different now in the last 4 weeks? Okay, let's start over. Let's do the functional spec all over again. Let's start over again. So that, it's crazy. Who wants to do that? Who wants to get any professional Selenium people in here that all they do is write Selenium? Anybody want to do that? Like, it's like Silverlight. Silverlight, yeah, you create great apps in Silverlight. Find someone to maintain your Silverlight app now. Can't.
You pay me enough money, I will.
Yeah, if you pay enough money.
That's exactly.
But at that point, you might as well rewrite the app because you have to pay a guy. But yeah, but a lot of people want lots of extra money to start doing that. It's like COBOL. Who wants to do COBOL anymore? You can make a great money doing COBOL, right? I couldn't do it. So the whole point is, what is the goal? Right? Is the goal to have TypeScript? Is the goal to have static checking? The goal is to build great apps. And is static typing going to help? Sure, but it can also hinder. But you can make the argument either way. But to me, I think that's on the margins. I don't think that's what's making apps fail or succeed. The things that do that is writing way too complex code, right? So lint your code. Like, I don't know if you've seen my talk before, but we talked about linting, and I'll show you a little bit of what's new in linting with that. Where you can check unused variables, and I wish that was on purpose. Because that would be perfect if that was on purpose. That's awesome instead of typos. But that's kind of funny. I'm not fixing that. That's going to stay like that.
Not just types.
I know, right? But it's actually typos. That's funny. That's why typos are good, because you don't even know what it's supposed to be. Cyclomatic complexity. Everyone know what cyclomatic complexity is? Very comp sci word. Basically, it's like how many if statements you have in your method. So if you have a lot of ifs and for loops and all that stuff like that, right? Like, it's harder to read. If you're reading that code and you've got 30 if statements, or you have the logical arrow pattern or whatever. It's like an anti-pattern, where you wrap. So you have if, and then this 14 indents of conditional statements. It's like, how the hell do I get out of this thing? Like, is there an escape here? Like, is there a hatch I can get the hell out of here with? And it's like, how many times have you seen that code? Or someone will write an if statement around the whole method. It's like, okay, now any type of things you want to do different has to go another indentation, another logical branch within this thing. So you can do that linting. If you do FX cop, right, in CSharp or those things like that, you can do linting to catch a lot of these problems. Not perfect, right? That's where you have peer reviewing. Everyone gets their code. Everyone get their code peer reviewed.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyone not get their code peer reviewed?
Me.
You don't need it.
We're a local company, so no one's going to peer review that.
So then, because it's perfect anyways, you don't need it.
Absolutely.
Of course. And then unit tests, right? Like, you do those things. If you do those things real well, you compose your code from simple modules, small, easy to understand bits of logic. You do all those things. I don't think you're going to have that many problems. The problem is we're not doing all those things, right? Like, usually we're not. Your question?
Well, so what I want to say is that's if you do this, it will not guarantee your code is maintainable, especially for very large projects. That's one of the reasons why Google, they switched from AuthScript to TypeScript, because they realized that in big projects with big teams, getting someone up to speed or to understand the code and to maintain it, it's much easier if you do static.
Ultimately, TypeScript is more about enabling the tooling to help you than anything else.
That's right.
That's really what it is.
Yeah.
This does not help teams of disparate sizes to be able to use the tooling to identify, to do declarations, to zip around to the different things that are duct taped together in multiple areas and whatnot. So
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you in a large way. And I tell you why. Because we're building large-scale apps with CommonJS modules that are simple 10-line bits of code that are stored. Like, I go to different projects at my company now, and I can step in and be able to figure out what's going on in that app.
and
I've
you
never been
have
able
10
to do
years
it.
of experience.
Sorry?
You have 10 years of experience.
Not with the stuff I'm doing now, I don't. I had 1 years of experience where I'd never really grown for a long time. Because JavaScript was terrible. It was large JavaScript files with 1,000 lines of code where everything was a global variable and a global function. But that's not what it is anymore. Like, if you have CommonJS modules, and we'll get into that later, it makes code way easier to understand. You have a good IDE, like you have WebStorm, you have Sublime, Visual Studio's getting much better, not perfect, but getting better. And so, and you're doing this, TypeScript again is just annotations. That's all it's doing. It's not actually making your language static. It's not doing that, it's just annotations. So there's other annotation options that aren't so limiting that we'll look at. But I think if you do these things well, and you have unit tests, you peer reviewed, and you have simple modules, to me that's where the most problems have come with. And, this is my, of course, personal experience, not TypeScript expert. So, IntelliSense, right? So it gives you that, but there's options now. JSDoc, you can use JSDoc if you want. JSDoc is a similar idea, except it doesn't make you do those things. If you want to be sometimes dynamic, you can still do that with JSDoc. And you're still going to get IDE support. It's still going to tell you what the function is supposed to be, all those things like that. and opt-in type notation, there's multiple options now. So the new one is Flow by Facebook. So what Flow is actually interesting. They'll actually infer types for you when you're running and when you're running your code. So if you have a function of a variable and a function that's obviously clear it's a string, if you pass to it something that's not a string, it will warn you saying this is a string. It's supposed to be a string here. So you can opt in type by type when you want that. To me, that's a better paradigm. R-type is a new one that's coming out, where the guy kind of took a lot. Eric Elliott, he's like a JavaScript expert. He's really good, writes really good books and great articles and does great talks. And I'll post a bunch of links after that kind of got me to these opinions. If you share them, even if you don't share them, you might want to at least figure out why I'm so screwed up. So R-type is like a similar idea. It helps build documentation for your APIs. It gives you IntelliSense that you need, and it's fully in JavaScript. Even like Flow. The problem with Flow right now, they're not showing Windows love. So if you're a Windows developer, if you're running on a Windows machine, the story isn't that great. They're not really supporting it that well. They're supposed to be changing it, but again, I think those things are good. But I think TypeScript mostly is good. I just think some of it is annoying. So classes, eventually got to it. So classical inheritance of prototype, this is a terrible spell. I did this really quick. I changed a bunch of slides today. I should do some spell check on these things. PowerPoint's not helping me out. So classical inheritance for prototypical inheritance. Everyone's familiar with prototypical inheritance and really thought of it that way, that it's what really JavaScript is, but you kind of don't think of it that way. So you can't modify or add new methods to them at runtime for classical, right? Like usual static. Prototypes, you can do either one. Classes for most languages, like C# doesn't support multiple inheritance. Like you can do multiple interfaces, multiple things, but right, inherit from one. So these you can make 50 of them together. You'll see an example. It's kind of fun. Verbose complicated, right? So you have to think of whether abstract classes, interfaces, and all those things like that. Especially for young developers, I find those sometimes hard for people to grasp. Like when you use interface versus abstract class, I know it's, for more seasoned guys, it's not a big deal. But it's very complicated. You have to really understand it. So to me, it's simpler. You have objects and extending objects. It's the only operation required. So you have objects, you just add more to it. So it makes it a little easier. So Gang of Four design patterns, that's like the big book for object-oriented programming. Right? The book that's the Bible for object-oriented programming says object composition over class inheritance. Class inheritance sucks, right? Like it has problems. Like that's why interfaces are better and all those things like that. That's what you should really go for. Come on. I like this quote. It's kind of funny. I mean, it takes a while to think about it. Like, so you just want that one object, right? And then you inherit everything that comes with it, whether you want to or not. You get the whole thing. I love it. I wish I came up with it. I should just put my name on it. No one was going to. So, like to me, that's so. I'm not saying object-oriented programming is bad. I'm saying the whole classical inheritance has a lot of flaws to it. I never thought about till recently as I wrote more and more JavaScript. This is a long one, barely fit on the screen. It talks about how when classes were like the idea of classes when they brought into JavaScript, all it was a marketing gimmick for Java guys to be like, hey, what's this cool thing over here? Look, it's got classes. I can inherit things. It's awesome. But most Java people and most C# people until recently, until someone told them they had to write front end now, said this JavaScript thing's garbage. Like everyone tells me all the time at work, like all the back end guys, like this is like a kid language, JavaScript, right? And sometimes it is, sometimes it feels like one. But it took people away. So like Crockford says, like people started trying to do objects for everything. You're like, oh look at this thing works, and then you can use you have privates and all those interesting things. So this is, if you've done it like constructor functions in JavaScript, that's all this is. And so you create your basic object, which is foo, and you prototype it, give it a function, this.me, and then you create another class, which is bar. I hate foo bar, but whatever. It was already there. I don't want to write my own. And so you call this with who and extends, and you do all that thing. And then you say, now, that new thing is really annoying. Because if you don't specify new, this breaks. So you have to know that you have to use that keyword. It's kind of weird. It won't break if you don't. It will work fine until you go use it. Then it won't, of course. So it's kind of like, so it's got all these things are mapping. So you're mapping all these prototypes to each other. You have to keep reference to them all. We have more of a object literal, same amount of code, right? Like it's not lines of code that matters. We know that. Where it's a lot simpler paradigm to figure out. Use object create, and it gives you the ability to say this stuff me and everything. Right? So then you think about it, just adding functions to that base object is all it's really doing. That makes sense. And then the thinking of it, like the way JavaScript looks at it, it's a lot simpler. Kind of comprehend. I think. So obviously V2, the PowerPoint's one, so they had to stop V2, but V2 was just basically the same thing. So we didn't move it, but it's basically the same kind of process. Those two of them compare. So again, lines of code is nothing different, right? So it's not about that. It's about the issues that come with understanding of this thing, and then understanding that you have to have that new keyword. And it's bit me multiple times, and somewhat seasoned. Been doing it for a long time. Again, most of those years I was terrible. Just didn't know. This one's fun. It's from Eric Elliott, and talking about concatenate inheritance, right? Where you're putting all these things together. You have skydiving, you have ninja, you have a mouse, and you have a wingsuit, and then you can just put it all together. It's pretty straightforward, right? Like it just adds all the things and overrides whatever they have on each other. The last one in overrides the properties if it has the same property. So anyone used Lodash before? Oh my goodness. How many people write JavaScript on a regular basis? How many people don't write JavaScript? How many people didn't put their hands up? Okay. So if you write JavaScript and you never use Lodash or underscore, do yourself a favor. If you get one thing out of this talk, you must use those libraries. They're awesome for functional programming. They allow you to do mapping functions really well. If you have an array of data, but you only want one property from element as a pluck function, it'll grab it all and turn it into a different object for you, a different array. It's amazing, but it also does assign. So ES6 does it also, but you can assign, you can basically concatenate your objects together. But it does way more than that. Lodash is like a port from underscore, but it's quite a bit better. It's what everyone's kind of using now. Especially before ES6 came in. They solved so many problems. So please use it if you write JavaScript. Okay. So that's kind of the whole time. Is everyone take a break? Take a break. Okay, let's take a break. We'll get to the next part.